What if 99% of humanity disappeared? First off, we're talking about a massive reduction in people, leaving only 80 million humans on the entire planet. But hey, don't panic just yet. Let's see how this wild ride would unfold. Imagine bustling cities turned into ghost towns, empty highways and quiet neighborhoods. It'd be like a never-ending vacation for those left behind. Of course, there'd be some challenges to tackle, like whoops, untended gas mains causing fires, and those abandoned chemical storage facilities and industrial plants might create some pollution. Oh, and let's not forget about abandoned nuclear power plants. Wild animals would be more free, and poor domestic cattle and sheep would struggle in cold northern climates. To make things worse, stored gasoline wouldn't last long because it's not so great at staying stable. Let's get to the silver lining. With only 80 million people, there would be plenty of resources. Organizing and salvaging whatever's left would be totally doable, especially in smaller countries like Belgium. They'd probably have a, "Hey, we got this" attitude. They'd have just around 120,000 folks left, all within a couple of hours' drive from each other. That is, of course, if this remaining 1% of the world's population is scattered around the planet equally based on countries' populations before this event happened. In this case, pretty much every nation would face a similar situation. Imagine South Korea with 500,000 people, mostly hanging out together. Brazil would have 2 million inhabitants chilling out along the Atlantic coast. Hopefully, unlike those movies where post-apocalyptic gangs go mad, the survivors would try to stick together in their old communities. These resourceful fellas would band together in new family and village communities, and they'd have the knowledge and skills to handle any troublemakers. Remember, we're social creatures, and we'd want to stick together to face the unknown. Well, at least we wouldn't have to start from scratch here. We'd have a major advantage. All the knowledge accumulated by humanity would still be with us. If we had electricity and internet available, we would be okay. So, would we re-industrialize? Yeah, we would. We'd have tools and machines still lying around, giving us a head start. Sure, renewable energy might be tricky at first, and we might have to rely on fossil fuels like coal, but we're resourceful, and we'd find a way to make it work. Plus, we'd have some brilliant minds with critical skills who'd step up to the challenge. This type of stuff kind of happened in real life. Think of the historical collapse events. They made an epic comeback that spanned centuries. Back in the 14th century, a plague struck and claimed the lives of up to half of all Europeans. The Middle East was also impacted, with around 1/10 of the global population succumbing to the disease. Surprisingly, this devastating event had little negative impact on Europe's technological and economic progress. And 2 centuries later, the population eventually rebounded to how it was before. 2 other instances of collapse are that of Rome and the Bronze Age. Both brought down impressive civilizations that had enjoyed technological advancements and economic prosperity and engaged in international trade. The Bronze Age collapse occurred between 1200 and 1150 BCE, leading to the fall of Mycenaean, Mycenaean Greece and Hittite civilizations, and the weakening of Egyptian and Assyrian civilizations. To this day, historians remain uncertain about the exact reasons behind this collapse. Rome, once boasting over 1 million inhabitants and serving as the seat of the Western Roman Empire for centuries, faced a dramatic decline in the 5th century. Within a few decades, the entire empire collapsed. It took until the 1930s for Rome to surpass its previous peak population. Fortunately, there are no historical examples of collapse events that resulted in more than 20% of the global population's demise. Many aspects of our physical infrastructure, such as machines, tools, and buildings, would still be intact and usable, placing us in a far better position than in 2500 BCE. The remaining 80 million survivors would have access to the wealth of knowledge accumulated by humanity. Moreover, some individuals might hold critical professions like engineers or chemists. It's quite likely that some people would have agricultural knowledge, helping feed the population. Okay, but let's make this scenario more personal. If you woke up one day to find 99% of the population missing, it would undoubtedly be an overwhelming and surreal experience. Survival would become your immediate priority, and your actions would largely depend on the resources and skills available to you. Here's what you would probably do. You'd take a moment to comprehend what's happened. This sudden disappearance of people would be shocking and confusing. Your friends and family would most probably be gone too, like it happened in Avengers. Your primary focus would be securing essential survival items, such as food, water, shelter, and medical supplies. You'd need to visit nearby grocery stores, pharmacies, and warehouses to gather provisions that could last for an extended period. Then you'd need to find other survivors. I mean, many people now lack essential skills like growing food, purifying water, or self-defense. You'd need to start learning them if there was no internet and no YouTube tutorials to rely on. Well, libraries, museums, and educational institutions have tons of information about the world and its history. Once you formed a community, you and your fellas would have to protect it like there's no tomorrow. You might feel like there isn't one at that point anyway. While most technology might still work initially, you'd need to ensure the protection of power sources. To do that, you'd have to be very cautious. The world would be in turmoil, so you'd need to remain vigilant and cautious of potential dangers. Without proper law enforcement and governance, there could be risks from wild animals, natural disasters, or even other survivors who might be hostile. Now let's explore the best and worst case scenarios. The sudden disappearance of so many people would create widespread chaos, leading to mass accidents and damage. With the absence of healthcare professionals and medical supplies, diseases could spread, leading to health crises. Food production and distribution systems would collapse, and food shortages and famine could become a real possibility. Looting and violence could occur since desperate people would search for resources and try to survive. The best case scenario is that after all this chaos, survivors would eventually come together to support one another and form resilient communities. The world would have significantly fewer carbon emissions, leading to a positive impact on the environment. With a small population, resources like food and water might be more abundant and sustainable in the long run. Without the constraints of a highly populated world, people could focus on individual passions, arts, and creativity. With advanced technology still available, survivors might start working on preserving knowledge and advancing scientific research. But overall, the world would change drastically, and the future would be uncertain. Your actions and the actions of other survivors would play a crucial role in shaping the new world and determining its trajectory. Feeling like a fishing pro? Head to the nearest water body and try your luck at reeling in some aquatic treats. Now, here's an idea. Become a green thumb superstar. Plant those seeds, nurture your crops, and watch your mini farm flourish. Farm-to-table cuisine, anyone? And how about those furry friends? If you spot any wandering pets, befriend them, and you've got yourself some loyal companions. Now take a deep breath, chin up, and embrace your inner survival guru. Remember, this might be a wild ride, but you've got the spirit and the skills to thrive in this post-apocalyptic feast of life. So go out there. Let's imagine the end of the world has come, and there's no drama here. The apocalypse occurred not because of the fall of a massive meteorite or a zombie invasion. It's just that people built ships for interstellar travel and left our planet because they got bored of being here. And still, many people stayed on Earth. But they just overslept the moment when the last ship with Earthlings left the planet's surface. So, several million of these people were left to wander in a world without infrastructure, electricity, an economy, and the internet. What will they do? How will they behave? And will they be able to survive in this lonely world? To figure it out, we need to look at video games. One company beta tested a new game and then informed the players that after 11 weeks, the server with the game would be deleted. In a sense, the players controlled their characters in a world that was bound to disappear soon. In such a situation, all the achievements in completing quests were meaningless. The developers analyzed the gameplay to understand how people would act in real conditions if the apocalypse was to happen in a few weeks. It was important to see how the players' behavior changed as they were getting closer to the end of the game. Interestingly, there was no chaos in the virtual world. Everyone just played. but they didn't accumulate experience and didn't collect items for leveling up the character. The number of tests passed decreased every day. The characters stopped developing. The players treated each other with respect. It's possible that, in reality, people would also stop thinking about self-improvement, their career, and boosting professional skills. A common problem would unite people and make them help each other. Such research into the simulation of the end of the world can help scientists and sociologists better understand human actions during emergencies and global disasters. So, let's return to those who overslept the departure of the last spaceship. And you're one of them. The first thing you do after realizing what's happened is run to the supermarket for food. Of course, you're not the only one who has come up with such an idea, so you meet many other survivors there. Now you'll have enough food for a couple of months. After that, the real challenge begins. Do you know the phrase that the strongest survives? It's wrong. The most intelligent one doesn't always survive either. Darwin wrote in his works that those who quickly adapt to the environment survive. If some guy knows karate and how to fly an airplane and runs fast, it doesn't mean he will win. Someone who knows how to hide from dangerous animals or can build shelter will survive. Those who are careful and who analyze and adapt to the situation will win. You need to leave the big city and start farming to have a food source. In abandoned stores, you choose books on gardening and growing vegetables. Also, if you eat meat, you will need livestock. When people left the planet, they opened the gates of all farms, so all chickens, cows, turkeys, and other animals went to forests and fields. You need to choose a country house with fertile land. It will be a challenging quest, so you train strength and endurance before you set off on this journey. You don't need to gain muscles, but running daily to improve breathing is an excellent choice. It will be much harder for you to survive if you're alone. Find some company. These should be people you can trust. Building a new society is much easier when there are many of you. You and your team find bicycles and go far out of town. Your water supplies run out along the way, so you go to the river. It's dangerous to drink from it because the water can be poisoned. You use special tablets that dissolve in liquid and destroy all germs. You can also use a bonfire and boil the water. You don't have to hunt to find food. You can find many berries, mushrooms, and edible plants in the forest. But don't eat the first thing you see unless you want to get poisoned. If you have no experience in this area, use special books with instructions about what you can eat in the forest. Always be careful and keep your eyes open. There are bears, wolves, and other dangerous animals in the wilderness. The bear is quite a cowardly beast, and it wants to meet you even less than you do. So in some cases, you need to make noise to scare it away. In addition, it's unlikely that animals will attack a large group of people. Great. You found the right place and started plowing the ground to plant vegetables. Every day, you and your friends go to the forest to catch turkeys and rabbits to create a small farm. You and your team have been working hard for many years to build a small civilization. The basis of any society is laws and rules. You write an extensive list of what is allowed and forbidden in the new world, and your descendants receive this knowledge. Mutual assistance, caring for each other, kindness, and love help the last remaining people on Earth to recreate a new civilization. Soon you get to know different communities, exchange goods with them, and even create a new currency. Of course, among the survivors, some are trying to bring chaos and break the law, but they are a minority, and as a rule, it's difficult for them to survive. In a sense, nature weeds out bad people. Humanity would survive in such conditions. However, if a global catastrophe occurred, people would have much bigger problems. Let's imagine that several large volcanoes started erupting simultaneously, and the continents got flooded by giant tsunamis. To survive in this situation, you'd need a lot of luck. You'd have to get to the roof of a tall building to escape the approaching water. And you would need to find a gas mask or a respiratory mask to breathe the air filled with volcano ash. Few people would be ready for that. Most of the survivors would be people living far from the epicenter of the disaster. When the eruptions and the tsunamis ended, people would begin a struggle for survival. It would be difficult to find food because the disaster would destroy many farms and supermarkets. In addition, many animals in the forests and fields would suffer from cataclysms. But you would still need to leave the city and look for a place to build a new life. Perhaps you'd have to sail a boat for several years, or walk around in a protective suit and a gas mask to save yourself from poisonous volcanic gases. But in any case, you would need to travel a lot and look for food somewhere. This time, there would be no forests and fields where you could catch a turkey or pick berries. Cataclysms would destroy all vegetation and flood almost the entire planet. To survive, you'd have to search for some canned food and fish, and cooperate with other people. But would people be able to fully restore the population in such conditions? Scientists conducted some studies and found that several hundred people would be able to continue the human race for centuries to come. But only if they found a safe place where there would be no natural disasters. It could be a small island or a small town built on water. Our ancestors managed to survive difficult times, an ice age and volcanic winters. For example, 12,000 years ago, at the end of the last ice age, people began to engage in agriculture. Small villages of several hundred to 1,000 people began appearing worldwide. They formed marriage bonds between villages to expand their families. Genetic diversity is necessary for successful population growth, so settling in one small village wouldn't be enough. People would have to look for other survivors worldwide and unite in large communities. Only then would humanity have a chance.
It's a snowy winter night. You're inside your cozy house and watching a historical movie that takes place during the Middle Ages. As you take another sip of your hot chocolate, you can't help but wonder how the people survived the winter back then. At that exact moment, your TV screen suddenly turns into a portal and pulls you inside. Whoa! You open your eyes to find yourself within the world of the movie you were just watching. A man approaches you and says, "Welcome to my medieval village. I am Bartholomew, and I called you here to give you an answer to your question." First of all, let me tell you that conditions became extremely harsh when the cold arrives, and not just for the northern countries. Mainland Europe takes its share of the brutal weather too. So winter is kind of a slowing down time for all of us. You see, we usually associate winter with old age and poverty because of all the changes that occur in nature during this time. For example, we can't really grow any crops when snow covers all our land. And by the early 14th century, things started to get even worse because we started seeing the first signs of what you may know as the Little Ice Age. Cold temperatures peaked. Weather anomalies and extreme events such as sudden floods or hailstorms started to occur, which added to our agony. Take the winter of 1359, for instance. Across central Italy, the snow rose to extraordinary heights. People had to throw the snow into the streets to lighten up their roofs. And because of that, some towns were completely blocked. Their inhabitants were trapped in their homes for several days. Another example of this is the winter of 1389. The snowfall was so great in the Luzerne region of France that many people's farmsteads and houses were destroyed. Bartholomew notices that you start shivering. Ah, you were not prepared for this journey back to medieval winters, I see. Let's walk to my home and find you some warmer clothes. As you can see, I'm already wearing a cloak, a scarf, and mittens, which are all made out of wool. I also have boots that are made out of leather from a deer. Still, all these are not really enough to stay warm when one is outside. That's why we usually layer other clothes underneath them all, to keep the warmth trapped. By the way, the wool can get heavy and itchy sometimes, so beneath our woolen outer clothing, we wear linen undergarments too. The linen acts as a barrier between the wool and the skin, therefore making things a bit more comfortable for us. It is also easier to wash linen clothes, and they dry way faster than woolen ones. The wealthier ones can line their winter clothing with fur. And us regular peasants sometimes use rabbit and lamb for the same purpose. It's not as glamorous, but still effective. We can also hunt some wild animals and birds with the permission of the Lord. Yet again, the sumptuary laws, in other words, consumption laws, are very clear on who can wear what according to their social standing. Take the 1363 English sumptuary law, for example. It states that the wives and daughters of craftspeople and land-owning peasants were only allowed to wear lamb, rabbit, cat, and fox furs. You notice a weird-looking hinged metal sphere in Bartholomew's pocket, and ask him what that is. "Ah, it's a hand warmer," he says, as he gives it to you. "If we are going to be outdoors for a long time, we bring one of these with us. Otherwise, one's fingers can get numb, you know. Now take a closer look at it, and you'll see that it has tiny holes on its surface. This helps the heat to escape, so that we can warm our hands without burning them once we fill it with hot coal." "That's kinda heavy," you say, and think about how lucky you are to be living in modern times. With just one click from the comfort of your home, you can order Hot Hands instant hand warmers from Amazon, and no coal is necessary. You can even put those inside your shoes to warm your toes, since they're pocket-sized, unlike this metal orb. You and Bartholomew arrive at his house. You realize that he does not take any of his outer garments off. "We keep everything on during the coldest months, because the indoor heating isn't always great," he says. "As you can see, the fireplace stands here at the center of our homes, and right above it, there is a ventilation hole rather than a chimney, which causes us to lose so much of the heat. Yet again, we don't usually sleep in our outside clothes. Instead, we put bricks and stones in the fire, wrap them in fabric, and take them to our beds to warm the sheets. Wearing our nightcaps all night long also helps. And when we're not sleeping, we usually try to stay close to the fireplace as much as possible." You sure appreciate that hot water bottle of yours more now, right? And you didn't even need to cover it with a cloth, like these folks have to do. It already came with a knit cover for your convenience. And the best part is, it's much softer than a brick, and can be heated in the microwave within seconds. "How rude of me! I forgot to offer you something to eat," Bartholomew says. "I know I already told you winter means stillness for us, but we still need to put in some work to not starve. There's a lot of preparation to be done in advance to survive these medieval winters. First of all, we start gathering wood for the fire from as early as spring and through the summer. Then there's the food we harvest in the fall. We have to preserve that in a special way, so all will last over the winter months. The same thing goes for meat, too. The methods we use include pickling, drying, and brining. In terms of grains, cereals, and pulses, we dry them out and store them in ceramic or clay pots. We later use them for making potted stews and soups, in addition to vegetables. Basically, everything we can find goes into the pot. The most common foods we eat in our everyday lives include onions, peas, beans, lentils, and herbs such as parsley. We still have to include protein in our diet, though, and we do that by eating cheese, eggs, fatty bacon, or salted pork. In terms of fresh fruits and berries, they are hard to find during wintertime, so we preserve the ones we already picked by the air drying method too. You think to yourself, if only these people had a food dryer at home, their lives would be so much easier. They could use it for all the foods Bartholomew just mentioned, from fruits to meat. Then again, there's no electricity here. I wouldn't want you to think winters are so grim, long, and boring after everything I've told you. We still do plenty of activities to keep ourselves entertained, Bartholomew says. But what? It's not like they can binge watch their favorite TV shows. We play in the snow a lot, adults and children all together. You can see plenty of peasants ice skating on the frozen lakes. To be able to do that, we used to use pieces of polished wood or horse shin bones. But now, we have iron skates too. I need to mention though, here in Western Europe, ice skating is not as common as in Scandinavia. That is because they are more accustomed to snow and cold temperatures. Sledding is another fun activity we do. Then there are indoor games, such as chess, backgammon, and other dice games. Wool spinning and telling stories are also common ways to spend some nice time with our family. Not surprisingly, nobles have more opportunities in the entertainment area too. For example, boar hunting is very common amongst the elite. At that moment, a portal appears at the door. Bartholomew says, "Guess it's time for you to head back, traveler. Fare thee well."